I wanted to start by just setting the scene for family violence. Family violence for us in New Zealand is a significant concern, and internationally we have also shown to be of great concern. In 2011, the United Nations Women presented a report which showed that 1 in 12 women are subject to physical violence and 14% are subject to sexual violence. And more recently, in 2014, the United Nations Human Rights Committee, which received a national report from New Zealand about family violence, recommended to the government that they take significant action and provide the resources to address family violence. Our national statistics on family violence are reflected here in Canterbury. And so every day the police receive 19 family violence reports. Between 2012 and 2013, the reports of concern received by Child, Youth and Family increased by over 1,500. And of course, with our post-earthquake rebuild situation, the international research told us that although other crime rates would drop, family violence would increase. And this is certainly the case here in Canterbury, where in the September 2012 weekend, there was a 53% increase in family violence. We also know in this post-natural disaster situation that ongoing stresses, lack of employment, difficulties finding housing and so on, create the risk factors associated with family violence. It was in this context of international and national statistics and also our local environment that some of the NGO leaders in the family violence sector decided to form a number of cafe conversations both here in Christchurch but also in South Canterbury and North Canterbury, and invited people from the NGO and government sector to ask the question, what can we do in this situation here in Canterbury to address the significant issue of family violence? They not only considered the information about the statistical information about family violence, but they also wanted to align the actions with some of the public policies that were coming out of government. Things like the Better Public Services, the White Paper for Vulnerable Children, and so on. And they were also aware that our government was really interested in collaborative efforts and knew that if we were really going to make a difference to family violence, that it was by working together across sectors, disciplines. Following on from these initial cafe conversations, our collaboration partners held a number of values hui and other meetings to develop the principles that underlie our collaboration. The guiding principles include our vision of respectful relationships and zero tolerance for any form of family violence, a number of values which we have behaviouralised, which guide the way we interact with our colleagues and the families we work with and individuals. And we also have a cultural framework which includes our treaty relationships framework, which is guided by key principles of participation, possession, and partnership. And we also recognise that in our Canterbury community we have a growing diversity of communities, and so we have a multicultural framework which includes that diversity. Since its inception in 2011, our collaboration has grown significantly. We now have nearly 50 partners representing a number of different organisations across sectors. We have over 100 active participants across our collaboration, and they represent over 1,000 employees and over 800 volunteers. The structure of our Canterbury Family Violence Collaboration it begins with a reference group. The reference group meets every 2 months, and their role is to provide resources and support and advice to everything we do in the collaboration. And they also take the opportunity to consider opportunities and risks in our environment and put forward suggestions about the way that the collaboration might want to deal with those things. The reference group selects the members of our steering committee and delegates them the authority to manage the operations of the collaboration. Our steering committee is comprised of both government and non-government members and a representation from mana whenua. Their role is to make decisions about the implementation of various aspects of our collaboration. They manage risks, they make sure that we're progressing confidently with all the projects we're undertaking, and they also continuously engage with a range of stakeholders that are really important to the success of our collaboration. The collaboration is hosted by Bernardo's, which is responsible for both the human resource and financial management of the collaboration. The collaboration is supported by a small part-time group of project manager, of which I'm part of the role, and also our communications and marketing coordinator, Jo here. Jo, put your hand up. After looking at considering the environment and considering where we best might make a difference as a collaborative rather than individual organisations, our collaboration has decided to focus its work on 5 main areas: coordinated community crisis response, youth, staff learning and development, housing and prevention. Each one of these work streams is led by a convener, and there are probably between about 10 and 20 members in each of those work streams who actively work on projects each year. For our coordinated community crisis, for our prevention work stream, the aim really is to increase awareness and understanding about family violence, and also where to go for help. At present, they're working on 3 main projects. Some of you might have seen the Canterbury Can Stand Up Against Violence project. Sir Mark Solomon's on the main North Road on one of our posters. This was launched last year as part of a family fun day with the Gambling Free Day, and involves attending a range of community events, distributing resources and talking to people about family violence, and also using the media extensively to to engage with people about family violence. At the end of last year, we began our Pacifica campaign in 4 Pacifica churches, and that's about getting the message about family violence out to Pacific communities. And this work stream has also undertaken a baseline survey to ask the community about their knowledge of family violence and if they know where to go for help. And we're hoping to repeat that survey this year to see if there's been any changes in those 2 elements since the campaigns have begun. Our coordinated community crisis response work stream is focusing on increasing the safety of women and children at the point of family violence crisis, but also increasing the crisis response and intervention services that we have here in Canterbury to ensure there's no further harm comes to women and children affected by family violence. They're currently working on 3 projects. The first one is to build an information pack for the rebuild workforce. As you know, not only have we got international colleagues coming in to help us with the Canterbury rebuild, but we've also got people from all over New Zealand coming in for the same reason, for employment. Many of them are unfamiliar with Canterbury and its services and often become quite isolated. So we're developing a wellbeing pack so that families who join us here in Canterbury know where to go for a range of wellbeing services. We're also working on women's refuges working in the polls. We don't really understand the capacity, capability and pathways that occur once the police pass the polls to the women's refuges. We want to understand more about that process and what happens for women and children when they engage with the women's refuges. And the last project that this work stream is working on is in our post-earthquake environment. We don't really understand what changes have occurred as a result of the 2010-2011 earthquakes. We really wanted to understand more about all the elements of the services, the target group we serve, and some of the issues that have been faced by this crisis response and intervention part of our system. And once we've got that map, we're hoping that it will guide us in, to identify where the issues are and where we can best put our efforts. Our youth work stream is really wanting to enhance young people's identification of the risk factors around family violence, but also to know where to go to receive support and stay safe. Over the last few months, we've been going into Christchurch schools and running a number of discussion groups with young people and to ask them what they know about family violence and where they'd go for help if they needed support and what else they think we should do. We're also running in September of this year a community event. We're going to hold in the Linwood College Hall, and we've invited the Brainwave Trust to come and give a presentation about the effects of family violence on the teenage brain, and we'll also have present a panel of family violence practitioners who will be available to ask questions from the parents in that community. In July this year, we're joining the Youth Collaborative Hui and running a couple of seminars at that Hui. The first one is to engage with school counsellors who have told us that many times young people tell them about family violence incidences, but because of confidentiality and trust reasons, they don't really know what to do with that information. And so our seminar is to provide guidance for that group in our community. And we're also going to give a presentation on the findings from our discussion groups with the young people in schools. But also last year we engaged with those that work in the youth sector, the professionals, to ask their guidance about what's needed to ensure that young people are safe in our community. And we want to present the findings from that discussion as well. And later this year, the young people said to us, you really need ambassadors in schools. Young people that we can go to when we need to talk about family violence and to get some initial support and guidance about the pathways to go to get that support. So we're hoping to launch that later this year. At the end of last year, with housing being such a significant issue for us in Canterbury, we added this additional strategic priority area to our collaborations efforts. You're probably aware that there are many forums already discussing this significant issue for Canterburyans. And so after consultation with senior leaders in our community, we've now decided to join the table of existing forums dealing with the housing issue and bring the family violence voice to those forums. In order to support us around that, last year we ran a survey, and probably many of you might have answered our survey, where we're really exploring how many of your clients were presenting with housing and family violence issues. We discovered that nearly 50% of your clients are presenting with both those issues. So we've done that, and we've also done a literature review, and we hope to continue gathering case studies where we'll draw out themes, and so we'll be able to provide quite an evidence base into these senior leadership forums who are making decisions about housing for our people. And staff learning and development work stream, it's really wanting to continually increasing the skill, knowledge and confidence of our family violence workforce here. Last year we surveyed many of you who are working in this area, discovered what your training needs were and where you felt confident, and from that we've developed a number of elements or number of projects. The first one of these is that we've developed a training calendar for the family violence workforce and engaged with many of you who are working in government departments to see if NGO sector colleagues can access some of your training. And so far, Child, Youth and Family, Department of Corrections and the CDHB are fully engaged and supportive of this initiative. We're also developing a set of core competencies for the family violence workforce here in Canterbury. We're aware that the Task Force for Family Violence has that on their work plan, but our discussions with them say that that's a little way off. So we're really wanting to develop this framework so that all the training that we provide through this work stream is focused on the competencies that our workforce needs for the future. And lastly, we're really interested in attracting young people into our workforce. Along with other workforces, we have an ageing population, and so we're doing a number of things. We're going into tertiary institutions to deliver lectures to raise awareness about what it's like to work in the family violence workforce. But more recently we had the opportunity of developing a video clip for Careers New Zealand, and we're inviting a number of people who work in the family violence workforce to tell their story about what it's like working in kind of their everyday life really, and to try and encourage young people to take some interest in this. And we've also contacted the internship department at the University of Canterbury, who are very interested in providing a number of Bachelor of Arts students to complete their internships with us. Kind of a win-win. They get to come out into the real world, and hopefully they'll be interested in continuing to work in the family violence sector. Okay. So if you want to know anything more about the Canterbury Family Violence Collaboration, by all means approach us in the breaks. We've got Ashley Seaford over in the corner, who's the convener for the Staff Learning and Development work stream, and I mentioned Joe here, and there's some other members of the steering group here also, so don't hesitate to come in contact with us.